Now, I think the rage of animal lovers is getting to the racing industry. The runner-up in the Cup, Kieran McAvoy, the jockey, on Tiger Moth, was fined $50,000, banned for 13 races for too free a use of his whip. So I think the Cup organisers are quite conscious of the look now. Let's switch to foreign affairs. I mean, China. It's really coming for us here in Australia, and this is so serious, and it's getting worse. We're being made an example of. First, China banned our beef from 4 abattoirs. Then it killed off our barley exports. Last month, China slowed down or cancelled some of our coal exports. Chinese mills were then told to avoid buying our cotton. And all this after Australia demanded an inquiry into how the coronavirus started in China. And it could get a lot nastier with China's our biggest trade partner and, by the way, our biggest strategic threat. China says it's going to change the way it inspects our exports of iron ore, which could give it more excuses to ban some of that too. And now, yet more blocks. Cargoes of live lobster left to rot on the docks in Shanghai this week. Queensland timber banned, allegedly for having beetles. Copper and sugar tipped to be next to be banned. Wine is under the microscope. Now, when China is so clearly punishing us, so clearly bullying us, when this dictatorship is so aggressive and will not even answer the phone when our ministers call, I think the federal Labor leader, Anthony Albanese, today struck exactly the wrong note by suggesting it was somehow all Australia's fault and that the Morrison government should, I don't know, do something to please China.
The government should be having a constructive relationship and set about repairing that relationship.
Oh, really? I look forward to some constructive suggestions as to what we should do, Mr Albanese. I was joined earlier by Michael Shoebridge, Director of Defence Strategy and National Security at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Michael Shoebridge, thank you so much for joining me. What is going on?
Well, Andrew, that long list of things that Australia sells into the Chinese economy is talked about as an uncertain trade, uncertainty in our China trade. I think the one thing we have from Beijing out of all this is certainty, and that is that Beijing wants to use our trade and others' trade with the Chinese economy as a weapon. So they're laying minefields in their Chinese market, and the Chinese government is then deciding when to blow up the mines around particular exports and industries.
How far do you think they could take this?
I think they're wanting to punish Australia to show the rest of the world what happens when you don't acquiesce to Beijing's directions. So when you want to find out how the pandemic happened, when you don't want your policy dictated by Beijing and you don't want them hacking into your parliament and your political parties. So I think they could take it quite a way. But the funny thing is the rest of the world is moving in the opposite direction because of what Beijing is doing. As we can see with the Australia-Germany relationship and with the fact that China is now viewed unfavourably by over 70% of the populations in 14 of the most advanced economies on the planet.
So the worse they try to punish us, the worse their public image is around the world.
Yes, there's been a collapse in Chinese soft power just over the last 2 years, particularly during the pandemic, across the advanced economies of the world, not just here in Australia. And I think in Australia, the Chinese, for all their effort to understand us, just don't. When Australians get bullied, we do the opposite of folding. We really set our jaws and look for alternatives.
Well, you would hope that. There's a lot of businessmen that would like us, of course, to give in. But how does this stop? Unless we do give in, I can't really see that. I don't see that selling with the public. How does this stop?
I think it stops by us working to make China matter less to our economic future. So you look at lobsters, for example. We produce about 3% of the global lobster trade. How is it that 90% of our lobsters have to be sold into a Chinese market that is now used as a hostage? We can make changes to that. It'll take time, won't be easy, but you can't tell me that our competitive, high-quality produce is not marketable in the rest of the world.
Yes, I think you're quite right. We need to wean ourselves off dependency on China. You mentioned Germany before. Now, this is interesting, I think. Germany seems to be supporting Australia by sending officers to be deployed with our Navy. They're sending a German frigate to patrol the Indian Ocean. That's obviously, it seems to me, a signal to China. How significant is this?
Well, I think it's very significant because Germany is one of those 14 advanced economies. It's the fourth biggest economy in the world, where its population's view of China has collapsed in recent years. And Germany is now looking at the Indo-Pacific and China not just as a place for economic growth, but also as a security issue. And its policies around China are converging with ours, and our economic partnership is going to grow. They're already our 10th biggest trading partner. So I think this security convergence and economic convergence is part of the good news for Australia out of all this.
You've mentioned that China wants to intimidate us to send a message to the rest of the world, wants us to give in, doesn't want us to keep pushing for an inquiry into how the virus started. But above that, what is its big game? Is it really? It seems to me it really wants to rule at least this part of the world, and not by making alliances or anything, but by simply scaring other countries into acquiescence.
Well, yes, and this is exactly what Xi Jinping has set out in speeches that we can all read. So his one back in 2017, addressed to the 19th Party Congress, he talked about the China dream and described that as a Sino-centred world where China's power is economic, strategic and technological. And that is the vision he wants. He wants to treat other countries and populations like the Chinese government treats their own citizens, and that's with very clear reward and punishment.
What a terrifying future. Michael Shoebridge, thank you so much indeed for your time.
Thanks very much, Andrew.